Let's be real for a moment. Life is exhausting sometimes, isn't it? We've all had those seasons when it feels like we're carrying a mountain on our backs, when our minds are racing with worries and our bodies feel like they can't keep going. You're tired, you're worn out. Maybe you've been pushing through struggle after struggle, trying to make things happen, trying to keep everything together, and it's easy to think, is it even worth it? But here's the truth. God knows you're tired. He knows every weight you're carrying, every sleepless night, every moment you felt overwhelmed. And here's the good news. You don't have to carry it all by yourself. God sees you, and He's working things out even if you can't see it just yet. Let's dive in today and talk about the peace, strength, and hope that God has for you, even in the middle of your exhaustion. You know, there are moments in life when we just want to throw in the towel when we've prayed for things to change and it feels like nothing's happening. We've asked God to intervene, to fix things, to lighten our load, and yet it feels like things are just as heavy as they were before, if not heavier. But remember, in these moments, it's not that God's ignoring you. He hasn't turned a deaf ear to your cries. No, He's right there with you in the middle of it all, and He's orchestrating something greater than you can imagine. Think of it like a symphony. To us, it might sound like random noise and chaos right now, but God is the master conductor, piecing together every note, every beat, every trial to create a beautiful melody. Let's face it, sometimes we think that if we just push harder, work longer, or keep going a little bit more, things will finally fall into place. But God doesn't want us to live on the edge of burnout. He doesn't want us to drag ourselves along, thinking we're alone in our journey. No, He's inviting us to find strength and rest in Him, to hand over the weight that was never ours to carry alone. God knows every crack in the road that you've stumbled over, every hill you've climbed, and every night you spent praying for relief. He knows. Now, I want you to think about a story from the Bible that doesn't get talked about quite as much, but has so much to say to us about resilience, faith, and the power of God's intervention. Think of Elijah, the prophet who stood up against impossible odds. Elijah had been fighting for the Lord's name against corrupt rulers, facing danger and experiencing exhaustion beyond what most of us could imagine. He faced threats to his life, and when he ran, he ended up in a desolate wilderness, alone, tired, scared. In that moment, Elijah didn't feel strong or capable. He didn't feel like a warrior or a hero. He felt like giving up, so much so that he cried out to God, "I have had enough, Lord. Take my life." Elijah was utterly exhausted, feeling like he'd reached the end of his rope. But what did God do? Did He leave him to suffer in silence, thinking, "You should be stronger than this"? No. In 1 Kings chapter 19, verses 5 to 7, it says, God sent an angel to Elijah, who told him to get up and eat, not only once, but twice. God provided bread and water, and after Elijah had rested and eaten, he regained the strength he needed to continue. This wasn't God saying, "Elijah, you need to be stronger." No, this was God saying, "I see you, I understand what you're going through, and I am here to strengthen you." This moment is such a powerful reminder that God cares about us deeply, even when we feel like we have nothing left to give. Elijah was tired, but God was there. God knew Elijah was weary and needed to rest, and He gave him the strength to continue the journey. You may be feeling exactly like Elijah today. Maybe you're looking at the challenges in your life and thinking, "I don't have the strength to keep going." Maybe the weight of expectations, obligations, and struggles is wearing you down. But just as God met Elijah with what he needed at the exact moment he needed it, God is meeting you too. He's saying, "Rest in me, find peace in my presence." He's providing you with the strength to face today, tomorrow, and every day after that. But let's be honest, waiting on God's timing can be difficult. When we're weary and burdened, we naturally want immediate relief. It's easy to think, if God is here, why hasn't He already fixed everything? But in Isaiah chapter 40, verse 31, it says, "They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint." This verse is powerful because it reminds us that there's purpose in the waiting. In our weakness, God gives us strength. In our exhaustion, He gives us energy. And in our confusion, He gives us clarity. Waiting isn't easy, but the transformation it brings is worth it. Let's talk about waiting a bit more because it's a theme that comes up again and again in the Bible. Look at the story of Hannah. She desperately wanted a child, prayed fervently, and endured years of waiting. Can you imagine the exhaustion of that wait, of pouring your heart out in prayer year after year with no change? But in the end, God answered her prayers, and she gave birth to Samuel, who would become a great prophet for Israel. Her waiting was not in vain. God's timing was perfect. Hannah teaches us that even in our lowest moments, when we're exhausted from asking, hoping, and waiting, God is still listening. He's still working, and when the time is right, He will answer. And if that's true for Hannah, that's true for you. Sometimes we look around and wonder why it seems like others are moving forward while we're standing still. But God's timing is uniquely designed for you, for your journey. He knows when you need rest, when you need to wait, and when it's time for you to move forward. And in the waiting, He's doing something inside you. He's preparing you, strengthening you, shaping you to become the person He created you to be. He knows every part of you, every hope, every hurt, every dream. God knows exactly what you need and when you need it. Now, you may be wondering, what can I do right now in this moment of exhaustion? It might sound simple, but one of the most powerful things you can do is pray and rest. Just as God provided food and rest for Elijah, He's inviting you to slow down and seek His presence. Philippians chapter 4, verses 6-7 says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." God doesn't expect you to carry everything alone. He wants you to bring it to Him. Now let's consider another example, a quote from C.S. Lewis. He once said, "Hardships often prepare ordinary people for an extraordinary destiny." Think about that. Your struggles, your weariness, they're not wasted. They're not meaningless. They're part of your journey, building resilience, deepening your faith, and preparing you for something greater. The very things that make you feel weak today are the things God will use to make you strong tomorrow. He's taking every tear, every moment of doubt, every weary step, and He's using it all for His purpose in your life. Isn't that amazing? It's okay to feel tired. It's okay to admit that you don't have it all figured out. God doesn't expect you to be perfect, and He doesn't expect you to have endless strength on your own. In fact, it's in our weakness that His strength is revealed. When we come to the end of ourselves, we find the beginning of His power. So let go of the guilt, let go of the pressure, and just rest in the knowledge that God is holding you, guiding you, and working it out, even in ways you can't see. This brings us to an important point: surrender. Sometimes we hold so tightly to our plans, our timelines, and our desires that we leave little room for God to work. But God is asking you to open your hands, to release the burden you've been carrying, and to let Him take control. It's only when we surrender fully to Him that we can experience the peace He promises. Surrender isn't giving up, it's giving it over to the one who knows best. It's saying, "God, I trust you with this." It's admitting that we don't have all the answers, but we know the one who does. As we wrap this up, let me leave you with one final powerful verse. In Matthew chapter 11, verses 28-30, Jesus says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Isn't that an incredible invitation? Jesus is not only aware of your weariness, He's actively calling you to rest in Him, to take on His light burden and find peace. He doesn't want you to be weighed down by life's struggles. He wants you to walk in His grace. knowing that He's got everything under control. So right now, if you're feeling exhausted, if you're tired of fighting, tired of worrying, tired of carrying the weight on your own, take heart. God knows you're tired, and He's already working it out. He's preparing the way, orchestrating your breakthrough. You don't have to do it alone. Trust in Him, surrender to His plan, and let Him renew your strength. Remember, God has a purpose for your pain, a reason for your struggle, and a reward for your faithfulness. Don't give up. Let go of the need to control and let God work it out in His perfect way, in His perfect timing. May His peace and strength be with you today and always. God bless.